Do not make these same mistakes these home buyers made and now regret buying their home. What's up YouTube, Biz Matthew here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about some home buyer stories and what went wrong with them buying a home over the past 2 to 3 years during the housing market boom, right? With them buying a house probably too soon or buying a property too high of a price with ignoring inspections and other contingencies, and now they regret this purchase. Now, I want you all to react with me. So as I go and talk about these different stories, please comment down below what you would have done differently and different ways that you see them getting out of a specific bad deal or situation that they're in. Now, be sure to subscribe to this channel as I post more videos around the economy, the housing market, and finances as a whole. Now, I just want to start off by stating that this is not a direct attack to any of these home buyers in these stories. We're just trying to learn from their mistakes in order for us not to make those same mistakes, and also what we can do moving forward in 2023 that will help us buy a home. All right, so let's get started. All right, so I'm here on BuzzFeed News. Right here, they have a ton of different stories about, the unfortunate stories of people getting themselves into bad real estate deals during the pandemic. And this first person is from Columbus, Georgia. They were unable to find an affordable rental at the time, and they were looking at, okay, should I continue renting or should I get a house? And I think a lot of people were going through that during the pandemic, right? They're all like, okay, interest rates are low. I can pay the same amount for a mortgage than I can for a rental property. But the thing that people were doing was they didn't associate buying a house, or they didn't take into consideration everything else associated with owning a house. All the expenses, right? The maintenance, the repairs, cutting the grass, things of that nature that's needed in a house. And so they're probably willing to go a little bit higher than what they were paying for rent, and they got themselves in a bad deal. And so we're going to sort of even see that right here. And they start to stretch their budget, and they're like, well, I was paying $1,500 for rent. Maybe I could pay $1,800 for a mortgage, and plus I get equity, blase, blase. But they don't consider all these other things that are in the expense column with owning a property. So she had been pre-approved for a mortgage about a year earlier at 3.5, so she started looking more seriously. Well, if I'm going to pay this rent, I might as well buy, right? And I think that was a huge mistake a lot of people were making during the pandemic. So let's see how this turns out. Like many people, she was caught up with the home buying rush. She processes medical claims for work. She was outbid all the time. Her agent said that she would have to go above home asking price if she wanted to close the deal. All right, so that's another red flag. Well, not necessarily a red flag. Maybe the realtor was just being honest. Hey, if you want these houses, you have to go over asking. And that was the case, honestly, during these past 2-3 years. Now that's not the case right now, especially in certain areas at a certain price point. Everyone was looking for a 3-bed, 2-bed house around $300K. And so if there's a house like that in a desirable area, there's going to be people bidding $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 over that. I think another thing is that if you're not clear with your agent with your budget and how much you're going to spend on properties, they're going to do things like this and say, well, you got to go over asking. You need them to take into consideration your budget. And that's key, because you don't want them to talk you into buying something that you really can't afford. All right, so the last 2 years have been chaotic and frustrating time for buyers. So I guess it's just talking about everything that's going on, the whole pandemic boom and everything of that nature. But yeah, let's continue on. Let me see. All right, here in May, Reagan's 220 offer on a 3-bedroom home with a yard was accepted, but interest rates were rising. So this was in 2022. And as I stated before in other previous videos, there was a stat that came out that over like 450,000 homes that were bought, or it's like 430 actually, of homes that were bought in 2022 using low down payment loans are actually underwater now. And it's things like this. Unfortunately, you buy a property and you probably pay more than asking, but let's just continue hearing. I started to back out so many times, especially when I was going through the bidding wars. And even with this, I didn't feel good about bidding that much. All right. I'll never forget when my agent did the paperwork and it turned it in. I didn't get any sleep. I remember calling her the next morning. Was like, I'm thinking about backing out. Maybe I should just find a place to rent. Rika said the agent reminded her that a home is an investment. Classic. That when rates were lower, she could refinance and suggest she cuts corners, oh my goodness, somewhere or try to pick up a part-time job. I don't like hearing that because obviously this woman was taken advantage by her agent. Like, this is clear as day. Like, you hit them with this is an investment. It kind of reminds me of the car industry, right? Like, oh, you can refinance later. Here's this car that you want. It's a 15%, 20% APR. You could, hey, just go to your bank later, refinance it. You're fine. Cut corners somewhere else. Like, what? There's inflation. What am I going to cut corners at? My groceries? My healthcare? Try to pick a part-time job. I'm already working 50 hours a week. Like, what do you need me to do? And so it's like all this pressure, coming from the agent, and you see them, they're just trying to make a few $1,000s and 220,000. What is that? You're going to make $6,000, 3% of that. That's another thing. You have to be clear with your agent. Hey, these are my guidelines. This is what I want. This is my budget. And that's it. I understand the fear aspect too. Like, if you have a bad feeling about something, don't go forward with it. But like, I noticed, like, even when I got into real estate, that like the first purchase, you're always going to have normal fears. Like, when I bought my property, I was second guessing, thinking myself, like, am I making the right thing? But that just comes with the territory. You're just in this field of real estate. And so thinking about that is natural. So anyways, that's what happened. But I think with her, she was losing sleep. Man, I think that's a little bit extreme. I wasn't losing sleep. So she tried her best to shake off the nerves, move ahead. But by the time she closed in July, her mortgage rate was 6%. That's crazy because actually, investment loans are a little bit higher, and I bought my property at the end of May. I locked it in the beginning of May, right? And it was 6%. So home mortgages were around 5% when I bought my property in May. So it was rising. I feel like I bought more problems. Reagan's monthly rent had only been $800 a month. Her mortgage payment for a home of the same size is $1,500. Do you all see this? It's double of what she was paying for rent. And that's because of interest rate. That's because of pressure. I think this story, the landlord was telling her to get out, and so she had to move. I believe that's what they're saying. Unable to find affordable rent in time. Okay, yeah. So she had 30 days to move after her landlord management company told her that they were selling the home she was renting. So they were selling the home. Okay, makes sense. All right, that's what happened. She depleted her savings, maxed out her credit cards, which she previously kept only for emergency. She downsized from an SUV to a sedan to reduce her car payment. She's getting by paycheck to paycheck now. She's earning extra money by working for Instacart and renting out her car. There was no wiggle room to take her daughter out for her birthday. Do you all see this? If you're going to deplete your savings and not have any money after putting your down payment on the house, it's not a deal. Walk away. That's a telltale sign. If you're going to need to max out your credit cards in order to buy a house, don't do it. This is not investment. Oh, I did this for my first investment deal. Like, this is your home. You have a daughter. Don't be trying to do anything like that. I wonder what's up with her now, but that's the story. And so what can we learn from this story? So number one, you have to set your real estate agent in check, right? You got to set them straight. You have to let them know, hey, this is my budget. This is the area. If I say I'm going to back out of the deal, I'm going to back out. I know your job is to encourage me and motivate me, but this is where I'm at. If you think that you're going to actually get a deal off of owning a home versus renting, you really have to sit down and budget and have all the numbers out. And when you're calculating your housing costs, you got to plug in figures around maintaining the house, utilities, and just the upkeep and capital expenditures that you may have to pay on the property. All right? Because here they're saying that none of the kitchen appliances worked. There were electrical issues. The roof needed to be fixed. There was mold under the cabinet. For all of these things, come on, you all. So hopefully she can find something else to get her outside of living paycheck to paycheck and things of that nature. Let's go to another story. Here it is. This spring, after TJ's Grace lawyer gave notice of rent increase, She bought a house with her wife and 2 friends they were living with. By the time we looked at it, had basically already been sold. They found a 1,900 square foot home. It was noticeably smaller than the 3,000 feet they had been renting, but at 519 with 4.9% mortgage rate, it was what they could afford. Landlords can charge whatever they want, but owning has always been easier for them. And that's true, right? Like, there's rent increases, right? At least with a mortgage, it's fixed for 30 years usually. So while her monthly mortgages are about as much as her rent, was necessary repairs to the roof ended up costing $65,000, okay? Much more than the $12,000 or $17,000 the inspector had estimated before the sale. Meanwhile, Grace had quit her job as an administration assistant in September 2021, one of the many who left their job during the Great Resignation, okay? Found new job, even similar to 200, and she's worked as a nanny now, but is still job hunting. And her wife is a cleaner. She said they split their housing costs 4 ways. With their friends. We're just house poor now. And that's the thing. A lot of people are house poor now. A lot of their wealth is in the house. Yes, they don't have liquid cash, but they have a nice size house. And I think with them, I don't know, they said the payment is about the same, but then again, you have to put into consideration major repairs like this. Now they have to spend $65,000 to repair the roof. You see? Just comment down below what you all think of these stories so far. It's pretty sad. That's something you just have to think about. What else? All right, so in this article, they have a very interesting quote from a wealth advisor. And he states that his clients, they usually tell them to save 1% to 4% of the home value each year for housing expenses. And that's to pay for things like eventually a new roof or replacing the HVAC system or things of that nature. All right, so let's end off with this last story. So in New York, Sarah H had a house for $670,000, so she went $11,000 over asking. In mid-2020, when the pandemic restriction only allowed her and her fiance 20 minutes to view the property and prohibited them from bringing anyone with them for a second opinion. Wow, that is crazy. I don't know if that was brought upon because of the pandemic restrictions or the seller and the agent coming together and saying, yo, I don't want so many people looking at this house and doing all these things. But let's continue on reading. The sellers weren't the easiest people to work with. Their inspector went in to see the house separately, finding some asbestos and some old termite damage. Sarah had to push hard for the sellers to let in a termite inspector, a red flag, she later realized. Okay, working with difficult sellers is difficult, especially as a homeowner. If you feel like there's some information being withheld from you, usually that gut feeling is right. You should follow that gut feeling. I think he was rushed. He told her the house was fine, but turns out we have horrible termite damage. Renovating the kitchen, originally estimated to be a $40,000 project, would now cost $80,000 because of the damage the termites had wrought in that room alone. We know that the termite damage continues on throughout the house, that only gets worse with time. And so they have pictures right here. Essentially, they're bringing this house down to its studs because of the termite damage and because they weren't able to actually inspect the house the way they wanted to. Sarah still loves the house. What? Why do you still love this house? Let me know, why do you love this house? That's why you shouldn't fall in love with the house, okay? Payments for the repairs have been coming from an inheritance, savings, credit cards. The basement floods and the skylight in the upstairs bathroom leaks. The neighbors honestly just feel bad for us, and she has looked to take legal action against her inspector. She was told by friends and colleagues it would be too costly to pursue and difficult to win. Wow. So they had a sizable emergency of about $40,000, but it just wasn't enough for all the house problem. While she would like to build back up a housing fund, they have other more immediate costs to consider. My son daycares, it costs me $2,000 a month, like half of my paycheck. I would love to save 4%, but it's just not feasible. This is another thing. It's just like, it's like, what in the world? Like, people's money is just being wiped out, probably living paycheck to paycheck. Well, I don't know for sure. But once again, it just comes back to during that time, people were not doing a thorough inspection on houses, right? And inspectors, too, they're hit with this double whammy because they need to kind of impress agents, and at the same time, they need to tell the truth to homeowners. And so So it's very important to vet your inspector. I know I said that last one was the last story, but I just want to quickly go over this story. So this couple right here, they moved to Tacoma, Washington from Florida. And because of medical issues that put them at high risk during the pandemic, they relied on a realtor that introduced them to a lender, and they were given virtual tours of a few places in their $300,000 price range. The house they eventually bought looked nice and it was clean. There was nobody in it, so it was empty. So you can imagine all your stuff there. All right, where's the red flag? Right away, they're not able to be at the property. Don't be trying to move during this time. Yes, you probably disagree politically with an area that you're in, but don't rely on a realtor you don't know, right? On inspectors you don't know. Let's continue reading. They moved to their new home. Almost immediately, when you walk in the house, you could tell there's something off with the floor. It felt almost like a water bed or a trampoline. There was no joist under the floor. The house had settled on one side. We contacted our homeowner insurance and they were like, we'll pay if the floor falls in, but until then, you're on your own. They got scammed. That's a scam. That's a scam. Saying, hey, yeah, buy this house, go through inspections, everything is in your price range. Here's the pictures. The realtor walked through the property 100%. And they didn't say anything? Come on, like that's an obvious thing. You can obviously tell when floors are not secure, when floors are not leveled, right? And that's a huge foundation issue. If you're a homeowner and you're trying to find a house that you don't want to fix, if there's floor unlevelings in the floors, run. It's a foundation issue. Don't buy that house. That's why it's so important not to rush into a house and actually physically be there, especially if it's your primary residency. All right, so what can we learn from these stories? I think a few things we can take away is number one is always stick to your budget. Don't let your realtor or your lender convince you, oh, well, you can afford more or you can actually pay over asking. No, just stick with your budget. The other thing I noticed is that there's a lot of pressure, either from what's happening in the world, you're seeing people buy houses, or pressure from your agent. You have to stay level head. You have to not go super low with yourself when you lose out on a house, and don't go super high when you see a house that you actually like, right? Because those feelings can really mess with you just ignoring all the faults of a house, right? All its imperfections, right? Because you're just in love with it, right? Don't necessarily do that. Just like at a car dealership, that's what they want to do to you. They want you in the car, you're touching the steering wheel, you're looking at the colors, and you're forgetting about, yo, this costs $1 million, right? So make sure you're level-headed. Another thing is that a lot of people didn't do their inspections the right way. They either didn't have an inspection or they totally ignored telltale signs. For example, in the story about termites, if there's a little bit of termite damage, don't buy the house, period. Especially coming from an inspector you don't know, right? Don't completely trust it. Or the telltale signs of letting an inspector come into your house and things of that nature. So remember, a thorough inspection is required and needed in order to buy a house. Another thing with inspection is that you as a homeowner, you inspect it yourself, right? Because the woman in the beginning of the story, she found all these things after she closed. She should have been looking under the cabinets, really, when she looked at the house. I mean, you're not really thinking about that when you're viewing a house, but try to do a walkthrough, a second walkthrough before you commit to it. All right, you all, let me know what you all think of this video. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace.